Alison Sargent joins me now for a look at what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
We're going to start in Ethiopia, where the conflict between the central government and the Tigray region is drawing increasing concern from the international community.
Yeah, papers are warning that this conflict could destabilize the entire region as it starts to spread into neighboring countries. The pan-Arab paper Al Arabi Al Jadid today writes that over the weekend, the Tigrayans fired rockets into Eritrea, which they accuse of siding with Abiy Ahmed's government. Meanwhile, refugees have been pouring into South Sudan, and human rights groups are sounding the alarm about potential massacres of civilians. Now, the New York Times notes that it's actually hard to know exactly what is going on in the region since phone and internet service is cut off. The paper also looks at the origins of this conflict. They explain that there had been tension between the Tigrayans and Abiy Ahmed since he first took office 2 years ago and sidelined the region's leaders. The conflict then exploded on November 4th when Abiy launched military strikes in Tigray, and the world was distracted by the U.S. election, which was happening right at the same time. The paper writes, with such intransigent foes, analysts predict a potentially long and bloody fight.
Now, you did mention the U.S. election, and it's true, it does continue to make headlines around the world, including here in France.
That's right. The French paper Libération today is expressing their concern about the ongoing denial from Donald Trump of Joe Biden's victory. Libé's front page headline could perhaps be most politely translated here as damn 2 months, as in we still have 2 more months to go until Inauguration Day. Now, this is the issue of Libération that's going to be greeting Secretary of State, or that greeted, rather, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today as he meets with the French president. Mike Pompeo, of course, staunchly supports Donald Trump in contesting the election. Emmanuel Macron, meanwhile, was one of the first world leaders to congratulate Joe Biden. It's set to be an embarrassing meeting, according to the Parisien. Ahead of the meeting, the paper said that it's going to be a short one, probably, just sort of long enough to make Mike Pompeo feel, dignified.
All right, staying with French President Emmanuel Macron, he's also been making headlines for his criticism of the American press.
That's right. This conflict between Emmanuel Macron and what you could call the Anglo-American media began about a month ago with the coverage of the murder of schoolteacher Samuel Paty. Here, the media columnist for the New York Times, Ben Smith, says that Emmanuel Macron actually called him last week. He accuses the Anglo-American media of, quote, legitimizing this violence. Now, the main complaint from Macron and many here in France, actually, is that English and American outlets very immediately focused on the failures of France's policy towards Muslims rather than on the global terror threat, which for them is the real issue. Macron argues again here that the foreign press has misunderstood French culture, notably the idea of laïcité or secularism. Ben Smith, though, in this article largely defends the coverage. He writes, some of the coverage that has most offended the French has simply reflected the views of Black and Muslim French people who don't see the world the way that French elites want them to. Jeannie, this whole debate is so interesting. I would recommend, if you haven't been following it, this piece really does give a very thorough summary of all of the issues, the different perspectives, and I highly recommend reading it.
Now, other French papers here are looking into another controversy over Catholics who are holding public prayers.
Yeah, this is sort of another laïcité, secularism-related issue. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, religious groups have been banned from holding large gatherings, including Sunday Mass. Catholics, though, have been particularly upset about this. They've been defying the ban and gathering outside of churches and large groups to pray. That's what you see here on the front page of the regional paper Presse Océan. That's a group of 300 people that gathered in a central square in Nantes on Sunday. Now, one Catholic expressed their frustration to Le Figaro. They argue that the message being sent by the government is that it's more essential to go and buy home repair equipment than to save your soul. The rules could change, though. France's interior minister is meeting with religious leaders this Monday, but Le Figaro reports that it's a tricky situation for them since Catholics are the only religion that's asking for this ban on large prayer gatherings to be lifted. All of the other religions are fine to just wait until the end of the lockdown. And so if the government gives in to their request, well, Le Figaro says that they're going to be seen as making some sort of exception for Catholics.
Alison, we're going to end now with something completely different. This is some major news from the bird world. The world's fattest parrot species has made history by being named Bird of the Year for a second time.
That's right, Jeannie, an unprecedented second time for a bird species to win this award. This is the kakapo, known as the mighty moss chicken. It doesn't look that mighty in this photo, but it is the world's heaviest and longest living parrot. The Guardian reports that the species is critically endangered, and that's in part because what makes it so unique is also what makes makes it vulnerable to threats. Not only can the parrots not fly, they're also very slow breeders, and their main defense is to hide in plain sight and pretend to be a shrub.
Allison, thank you so much for that. Allison Sargent with that press review. Thanks to you for watching.